Welcome to Higher Learning. I am your host, Oz Rashid. This is more than just a podcast. It's a front row seat to how elite leaders build the most iconic of teams. The kind of leaders who spot potential that others overlook, who build cultures people don't want to leave, who set the bar, then raise it. Work and how we work is evolving at a rapid pace like no time in history. Our guests will give you insights on how to stay out in front when it comes to all things talent, leadership, management, artificial intelligence, and developing the skills that actually matter. Whether you're a founder, hiring manager, or just obsessed with building teams the right way, this is your spot. If it's your first time here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button, drop a rating, tell a friend who gets it. To our longtime listeners, we appreciate you. Thanks for the continued support. Now, let's get into it. On today's episode of Higher Learning, I am thrilled to welcome Camille Mallari, the Regional Chief Operating Officer of Parallon, a $2 billion healthcare services powerhouse. Camille is the kind of leader who did the work, rising from an entry-level trainee role to the C-suite over 14 years by mastering operations, leading with empathy, and never losing sight of the bigger picture. She holds both an MBA and a degree in political science, blending sharp analytical thinking with business acumen. But what truly sets Camille apart is her passion for developing others, especially young professionals, and her drive to create opportunities for women and minorities in leadership. She's lived the challenges, broken through ceilings, and now uses her platform to pull others up. This conversation is about career growth, leadership, grit, and what it really takes to rise. Camille, how the heck are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be here.
I am honored to have you as a guest. So we are one and the same. You live in Nashville, is that right?
That's right, yes. But I'm originally from Florida,
How long have you been there?
going on 4.5 years.
Okay. And it's changed a lot even just since you came 4.5 years ago, right?
Very much, yes. The city, both the landscape, the industry. Actually moved to Nashville during COVID, right
Yeah.
when the city closed. So very, very interesting, I think, time. I talk about that with a lot of people who also went through a similar experience of having to move during COVID. But it's very, very odd and kind of weird to say that it's been almost 5 years or more than 5 years since that's happened.
You're becoming a Nashville citizen at this point. Now, we opened an office there also in COVID around that same time. And I had not ever really spent any time in Nashville. And I'd obviously gone 3 or 4 times a year for the last few years. And oh my God, I love the people out there.
Bro.
I love the food scene. I love the craft cocktail scene. I love live music. There's just a lot going on there. And now the funny thing is, I do know that it's gotten way more metropolitan. There's a lot of technology and healthcare work there that we've seen, which is one of the reasons why we opened the office there. But there's a lot of like California migration is what I've seen. And I'm from Southern California. And, you know, not every person I know that's lived there a long time has that been their favorite part. But In-N-Out Burger, that is something migrating from California that I think is going to win over a lot of hearts and minds. I'm actually pretty pumped about that because that might mean they're coming closer to where I'm in South Florida. And as a native Southern Californian, I love my In-N-Out Burger. So sorry for the aside. I just wanted to do a little shout out. They do not sponsor the show yet. Maybe that changes. So Camille, I mentioned it a minute ago. You're the chief operating officer, one of the chief operating officers for Parallon. And so I'm fascinated how people get to where they are. So did you always want a career in operations, or is this something that you fell into, at some point during your career journey?
I wouldn't say that I probably thought that I would be here, to be honest with you, but I've learned a lot. Started early in healthcare, even in high school, actually. My mom actually ran some dental offices, running their dental practices on the business side. So I learned very early on, and I happened to come across Parallon at my career fair at University of Florida for a manager and trainee position. And it's very interesting the interview process that we had back then compared to now, but you kind of just take the opportunities that come your way. And I've been very blessed and very grateful that I'm here today.
I love that. University of Florida, great school. We have a lot of
Gators.
Gator Chomp alums here at the old MSH in Aon. And I've been to a couple games at the Swamp, and that is, especially when the team is good, that is a fun time. So I love to hear that. And look at the career fair.
Great time either way.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Either way, it's a great time. You're absolutely right about that. And look at the career fair working like that, right? You bumped into Parallon at the actual career fair. and it ended up turning
Yeah.
into a 14-year plus career. What, I mean, obviously you're looking for work. You wanted to find a great company to work at, but what drew you to the company? What was kind of about the mission and vision that said, this is the place for me?
What's interesting is that I also talked to a lot of recent grads or those who are looking for their first job since they graduate, and it is quite a different, obviously, economy since then. But back then, when I graduated, we were coming right off of an economy downturn, and jobs at that point in time were also very hard to get. At least my major, healthcare admin, was not actually it wasn't really a big um, group at the University of Florida at the time. So the career fair, when I went, it was really a lot more for engineering. Um, they had a huge one day just for engineers and for all the consulting, the big four consulting firms. There wasn't really a big health admin presence at the time. So it's really interesting to see the dynamic and how that's changed recently with healthcare and technology. But I went to my career fair. I just decided, you know what, I should probably go and experience this and see what I find. Most probably went to 8 different booths. All 8 of them were hiring for clinical, which rightfully so. They were looking for a lot of clinical positions at the time. And I just was about to leave the career fair, and I see the sign for Parallon. They were just formed new as a new entity of HCA. And they said healthcare administration. And it was the only job I was really kind of looking for. I was interning at the VA. So my only option at the time was, well, if I don't find a job in my senior year, I either go straight for my MHA or MBA. But I would love to just get, a first time job at that point in time. And I just happened to stumble across the booth and turned in my resume and application.
Sliding doors moment. Just imagine if you had just like, you had to run to grab a bite to eat or meet somebody, you might have walked right past it and your entire life is in a completely different direction. And we're going to talk about this more. So our company, one of the big things that we have as an offering is campus recruitment. And it's been really focused on technology or very broad based, not really in the healthcare space. But we work with companies like Restaurant Brands International, Popeyes, Burger King, Tim Hortons. We work with American Express around their technology program. And my team, and I had the benefit of going and being at some of these career fairs, or going to things like Grace Hopper, or going on campus and getting people excited about working at these different companies. It's just one of the most amazing forms of recruitment. I'm so passionate about, we did a lot of executive search work. We did a lot of later, and a lot of the hiring we do is obviously later in career. But to really be working with people just getting out into the workforce at a time when they need the most guidance and direction, and quite frankly, the decisions they make, what many times we're not prepared for, being some of the most important of their career and really setting the trajectory. Like, look at you starting at Parallon 14 years later, chief operating officer, different company, might be a different situation. So for me, it's such an important time. And right now, you and I are both reading what's going on in the news, that a lot of new college graduates are struggling to land jobs after they get their degree. What do you see in the market firsthand? And how would you advise somebody, who's approaching the job market, that they're just graduating? What would you advise them to think about, to approach, to do to be successful?
Yeah, it even this time right now compared to where I was graduating is so different, that the job market, the industry, the economy, and what is vastly changing. I actually just had a one-on-one with, she was a recent graduate. A colleague of mine reached out and said, hey, can you meet with her and just maybe give her some advice? She's been having a hard time finding, the role that she's been looking for. And at this point, because there's so many things that are changing each industry, I think you really have to say, you really just have to get your foot in the door. That would be my first advice. It may not be, a lot of people talk about Gen Z, and there's a lot of comments about the generation these days and how they've been very picky about what role they want, and they want X, Y, and Z benefits, and they want this and they want that. And to a certain degree, I definitely think that you should align with the values of the company that you're going with, for sure. But my advice would be, get your foot in the door, because I think what we want to see from folks, especially when they're just graduating, is how hungry are you to learn? Because right now everything is going to change in the next couple of years, right? And there's so much new technology. Even what they're learning when they're graduating today may not be what we need, in 5 years. But if I can find the people who are genuinely hungry for learning and grasping, how quickly we can adapt and change, I think that's probably really important for us to see.
100%. I'm going to rail a little bit here because I get frustrated, right? We look at the rising cost of university, right? And
Yes.
how people go into, I mean, it's a very hot topic. People go into debt, taking student loans, a lot of times pursuing
Yep.
degrees that the ROI on that's not going to be what you want it to be. We're forced to make these lifelong decisions at 18 years old, totally unprepared. I didn't even see my guidance counselor until like halfway through my second year in college.
Yep.
And quite frankly, when you look at the cost of university, right, you're paying for a lot of administration and bureaucracy, not enough for, taking teaching to the next level. And so I think something fundamentally has to change, right? Something, whether it be the way that we give out loans, whether it be the cost of university, whether it be how they actually practically put you to work rather than just teaching concepts, right? And education. It just fundamentally, it has to change. And one of the things that I would try to guide people on is, number one, I think all the stereotypes about Gen Z are bullshit. I do a lot of hiring in this space. Sure, there are some differences in if you grew up like post 2005, right, to pre 2005, but there's a lot of good things too. And a lot of these generalizations, I think, are really lazy, in my opinion, right? I think a lot of times as you get older, you're always looking back and saying, well, back in my day, this is how it used to be. We used to work a lot harder. And certainly, I do think it's really important to have a great work ethic and to take a step
Yep.
back, to take two steps forward in the future and to humble yourself and want to learn and not be entitled. But I think those are things that have always existed for every younger generation coming into the workforce to some degree or another. And so I totally agree with you. It's be ready for change, be adaptive,
Yep.
right? Build your network. I know that sounds like one of the biggest things I think you can get out of a university degree is hopefully meeting professors, getting internship opportunities, meeting classmates that ultimately I can tell you being in the workforce, helping people find work is probably the number one indicator about your ability to get a job is who do you know? It's not about what you know a lot of the time. It's who you know, who can
I
open the
agree.
door for you and give you that opportunity. And then standing out, right? Because there's a sea of people out there.
I
You've
agree.
got to stand out and you've got to do something unique and different. So I'm totally with you on that. And that being resistant to change is probably the worst thing you can do at this point in time because things are absolutely evolving and we don't have our thumb on exactly what it's going to look like in the coming 5 years. But I'll tell you what, those that are rigid or inflexible are going to struggle more than the people that are adaptive and willing to change. So love that. You're also passionate, and I can tell by the way that you just gave that answer about leadership development and even sit on the board of a young professionals group. So this is obviously something you care deeply about. Did you have a leadership development program in your career? I want to understand a little bit about Camille and like why this is something that was so important to you. Did you have a mentor? Did you have a program? Like, why did this shape you so much? And why do you think this is important, especially in today's day and age?
So I'll be honest, it's the program that hired me straight out of college that probably helped me have more of a passion for helping young leaders. And it's evolved. The manager trainee, we now call it a lead associate program, has really changed over the last decade or so. But I do feel like I got from that experience is we don't talk about development enough. I was very fortunate that it was a program that's very much catered to you're going to learn about our industry and our business, but you're also going to have a lot of opportunity to meet and develop from current leaders today. So what I've learned from that is I really want to pass that on to younger leaders, thinking about what would I have learned when I was younger at that point in time, fresh out of college grad. Again, the opportunities that were there, you have to really seize the opportunities that are given to you. And when you do take them, it's going to be very hard. But I feel like at that point, I wish I had more folks around my age or folks that we could really learn and talk about things more. So I wanted to share my experience and really help guide younger leaders. How can they be better in their current role and how can they prepare for their future role?
I really love that. It's such an important thing that you're doing. It is something that we should be thinking about, looking back as you rise up and putting your hand back down to lift people back up there with you. I think is such an important quality. And I know you're the guest, but I'm going to get on my soapbox again here. Certainly AI, right? And we all talk about AI all the time. And you know what? If there is a use case right now, right, for what AI can help in a company, it is a lot of the research. It is a lot of the
Mhm.
administrative work that a lot of times we'd hire a young Camille to come into our organization and do this work so that she could learn, right? And grow. And so a lot of companies are saying, well, you know what, we don't need to do that right now because AI, can replace a lot of that and we can get the same output and save the money. I think that is such a short-sighted way
That's
to look at
super.
things, okay? Um, we're always going to have people working. We're always going to want to be in communities and teams and working together to maybe it shrinks, maybe there's less people needed, maybe who knows? There's a lot of different things that are going to happen as we go through this kind of AI disruption. But what I'll tell you is this: not building a bench, not growing young talent, not taking that as a responsibility as an organization is a total mistake. Imagine if Parallon had not brought you in from Career Fair Day, they wouldn't have a chief operating officer in their organization for such a large organization. That's a big deal. They invested in you, and look at how you've paid that back tenfold to the company, to the organization. So anyone listening to this right now who is in a leadership capacity at an organization that does not prioritize bringing in early in career talent and going through and paying for some of the obstacles and challenges that inherently come with that and the work that comes with that is really doing themselves a long-term disservice. I truly believe that. And I see it in sports, I see it in the professional areas, I see it in almost all areas. Invest in our youth because they will
Yep.
absolutely help you take it to another level. And that's why I love having you on here, Camille. Go ahead.
I totally agree. And again, our company I've been very fortunate that our company is doing it, number one, personally, but also, secondly, our company has truly invested in this concept and making sure that we are thinking about future talent. Think about how much it costs for us to hire externally, but also the amount of time and effort that you would take to do that when we can grow our own talent internally. And it is probably one of the most underrated things that a company can do. So I'm very fortunate our company still continues to this day do that concept.
I don't know if Parallon's a public
But
company. We certainly don't offer stock advice here, but I'm buying. I love that. I love that long-term mindset. I love that. Go ahead. You're going to say something.
well, I was going to comment about the AI comment you said about, well, AI can do a lot of these things that some of our leaders are doing today. Absolutely, I don't disagree with that comment, but I do think there was an article that Forbes I read recently that said we need to actually invest more in our leaders that are going to be more human. They call it human-centric leadership that AI cannot do for us today. So that's why I think it's super important that we even invest more now in our people because we need our folks to be able to understand the changes that are happening. Yes, our work is going to change, but ultimately those human capabilities or the decision making is going to be a lot easier. But how we communicate and how we actually coordinate and partner with other people, that's something that technology can't really do. So I think it's super important that we continue to invest in people.
I, I'm going to take it a step further. And the prediction game for what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years is one fraught with, all types of egg on your face. But here I will say this with absolute certainty. I believe deeply that human intervention, interaction, centricity is going to be not only needed, but at a premium going forward, right? Whether it be cooking a meal, whether it be creating art, creating music, right? Management, interviewing, healthcare. There's going to be so many different disciplines where it's actually a premium that just because the technology can do it doesn't mean it should do it. And people are going to value that, probably pay more for it, and it be something probably more exclusive as time goes on. You can have this commoditized, technology transactional version of this, or you can have the human version. And I believe there's a lot of people that are going to crave that human. At least I hope that's the case. That'd be great for us. That'd be great for humanity. I think humanness is important, right? You also, okay. So like one of the things I love about your story is that you came in and then you worked your way up, and I can look at your LinkedIn and look at your resume and watch you rise up from, AVP client relations manager to assistant COO to AVP revenue cycle operations to vice president of global operations, like just every notch on the chain going up and up and up. And you're a woman in a minority who's risen to the C-level, right? And what I'm really interested in is, did you have to overcome a lot personally? And then what advice would you give to maybe somebody who's either a woman or a minority or both? What's advice you'd give them that you experienced throughout your career that you think might help?
Wow, that's a really big question, I think, to ask. And I probably don't think about it in terms of overcoming a lot, but I think it's more about understanding the dynamic of where you are um, on your leadership team and also where do you really ultimately want to go? Do I say that you have to, as a woman and a woman of color, do you have to work harder? I think there are some biases there, obviously, when you have coworkers who are at the same level and do you think you have to work extra harder? I do think that to a certain degree, yes. Naturally, me being Asian American, we have a tendency to be a little bit more on the quieter side, right? So I had to really focus in and hone in on my natural self and who I am is not who I really need to be in the business world. And I had to really understand and how do I move and navigate through that. So I think there's a lot more conversation that should happen about women in the workplace. I advocate a lot for women because I think that, especially young women, because we're not really taught to have a voice until very recently, right? In the most recent years. But I do think that there's still an equity in pay. I do know I've read a lot about that. I've heard a lot of senior female leaders talk about this in a book I'm reading right now. Actually, it still exists today. Although I don't think that we can probably prove that. A lot of people don't talk about, their pay necessarily, but there's definitely a level of, do I think that I have to prove myself more than some of my peers? I do think so. Whether that's internally or that's really happening, externally and what people perceive, I do think that there is a bias out there that we have to overcome.
Finding the right talent for your team doesn't have to be a struggle. Meet Aon Hire, the world's first hiring experience management platform designed to transform the way you hire. Powered by AI, Aon Hire takes the hassle out of every step in the process. From smart resume analysis to customized interview questions, it saves you time, money, and effort. Plus, with real-time insights from every interview, you can quickly identify top candidates, reduce turnover, and stay on budget. And forget about note-taking, Aon Hire takes care of that for you. Ready to revolutionize your hiring process? Visit aonhire.com and get started today.
Listen, I'm gonna call it like I see it, okay? There's been, recently a lot of pushback on all the push for equity and inclusion and all the things that we saw over the last 5-8 years, okay? And what I don't think people fully understand is that things were so far one way and so one-sided, and the barriers to getting to the same level as somebody else, right? That might look a little bit different than you, or where your starting line was, or what biases you had to overcome was so far one way because of the way our world and professional world and society had worked for so long, that naturally there had to be some level of overcorrection to try to bring things more to the center. And I'm hopeful to say that there's been progress on most sides of it, right? Which I'm grateful for and thankful for. But also, it doesn't take a lot to say that there's still a ways to go, and there's still opportunities to move forward. So, as much as I think people's mind frames have really changed, particularly in our country over the last year or two, on what things were and where they need to go, it's very important to give people, right, equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome, right? I believe we live in America. We all believe in meritocracy. May the best person win. But at the same time, we have to also understand that there's constraints on certain disenfranchised groups and in certain minorities and certain things that we should try to get rid of those constraints and put everybody at that starting line at the same time. And then we let the best person win, right? And go from there. And so there's still work to do there. And so I appreciate you bringing that up. It sounds like something that not necessarily was a big part of your career. You just did the work and you rose your way up, and you worked for a company that saw that in you and rewarded you for it. But there's a lot of work that still needs to be done there. And it's important that people like yourself advocate. And like we talked about earlier, as you're climbing up the ladder, putting that hand back down to help people get back up.
I think it's one thing to advocate for people, right? I'm a very big proponent of advocating for people who do well and your success, but you also have to learn how to advocate for yourself. And I think that's where either women and women of color, and specifically for me, I'm Filipino American. When we were raised, we were raised to follow and not break any rules and accept, we really did not want to step on any toes. And I think that's
Don't
just
rock the boat.
naturally,
Yeah.
don't rock the boat, right? Be grateful for what you're given. And don't get me wrong, I am grateful 1,000% every single day. But at the same time, it really took me a while to also understand you should also be advocating for yourself. And there's ways that you can do that, that's what I don't think that we don't talk about enough. What are some ways that women and young professional women who can truly advocate for themselves in a way that's going to get them the outcome that they want and they deserve?
Love that. I'm half Indian. One large side of my family is Indian. It's very hierarchical. It's Southeast Asian. There's
That's right.
there's women and men. There's things there. There's dynamics there. So I totally get it, and it's totally cultural and something that I think
Very
over
cultural.
time has started to evolve for the better. but it's totally cultural. It's totally ingrained in you. It's totally from a young age, the things you hear your parents say.
That's right.
Yeah. So I'm totally with you on that. Although I'll push back on one thing you said. You said Southeast Asian, quiet, more introverted. Nobody's ever accused this podcast host of that. So maybe I was breaking that barrier. Maybe I was the outlier in that situation. Camille, love it. Great conversation. I want to talk talent now because that's what pays the bills here at the Old Higher Learning Podcast. You built some great teams. You've been part of an organization that values people. So let's start here. Do you have a core hiring philosophy for when you're bringing people onto your team?
I do. So when I interview folks, I really look at number one, especially if they're a leader. It's really hard to get a gauge of who this person really is or who this leader really is in an hour and a half session. So to me, my main goal in interviewing somebody is understanding their thought process. They can give me the most polished answer and you can prep, for however many interview questions you have. But for me, what really drives it is how are you explaining this to me? What's your thought process in getting there? I really poke and ask more questions about the answer that they give me because I need to understand how does this person think? And how does this person react? You can't tell how they're going to react in a stressful environment, but if you understand their thought process and how they get to the result, I think that's the most important part for me.
I love that. What about, and you haven't interviewed a ton outside of Parallon, obviously, but maybe you were interviewing people. Do you have a memorable interview experience that comes to mind when I ask you that?
I'll tell you, it was not necessarily about the thought process, but probably that was very apparent that they are very not self-aware. And that's probably the second piece that I think is most important. I really ask a lot of questions about how are you, number one, are you self-aware? Number two, can you give me a response that actually knows that you actually reflect on yourself? Or are you more outwardly thinking or thinking more about how people perceive you? Those are two very different things to me. And I think it's very important as a leader, you have to know to me, that's very important because leadership is a two-way street. So if you're not very self-aware or you're not willing to actually receive feedback on how you can improve, there's no way that I think you're going to be able to grow in that position of leader.
Okay, but spill the tea. You don't have to name names, but can you tell me about an interviewee that was not very self-aware? Maybe something they said that kind of threw you off the track?
I wouldn't say it was very super memorable, but probably more so that he just kind of showed, he said a lot of you or they comments versus I. And that's an easy thing to say. But when it boils down to it, he really didn't advocate for his team. And I think that was one of the things that he failed to mention that was very apparent in the interview.
So we also test for this or question for this at MSH. Self-awareness is a humongous key thing for people that we want to hire because you want to be obtuse. You want to be somebody that's aware, right? There can be too much of it. You can be too self-aware. I have a daughter right now that's at a young age that's probably too self-aware. But it's something that's an important quality in somebody that you work with. So here's a question that I like to ask. Maybe you can add this to your tool belt here. I ask, what's a common misconception about you and who is the real you? And you can tell it puts people on their heels because they've never really been asked that in an interview before. And then you get a good sense of how they're perceived, but then they get an opportunity to kind of tell their hero's journey and say, this is who I really am, or this is what it is. And so I actually get insights on people that I never would have had I not asked that. So if you're looking for self-awareness, I like that question. I'm going to write down yours. I think those are good. I was going to ask favorite question to ask. Do you have one maybe not about self-awareness that you can ask? Okay, what is
not any of those, but I like to ask, how do you define success?
Ooh. Okay, what are you looking for out of that answer? What do you hoping to hear?
Interesting. I've asked, somebody's asked me that question too. And I said, I kind of leave it open-ended for a reason. Ultimately, what I would love to hear is twofold, that you are talking about what your own success looks like, but you also talk about what your team's success looks like. Again, I'm usually looking for leaders when I interview, and if they don't necessarily talk about their team, that kind of to me is it makes me pause a little bit or ask more questions, because you really can't have success without your team as a leader. And so I really like to see how they think about that question.
How would you answer that?
To me, how do I define success? Ooh, I think for me, my team is my number one. So I can't, our own mission and our own company's goal and strategy cannot survive without our team succeeding. So my own statement would say I would do it what I need for my team to be successful. I'm supposed to be the one that's going to remove those barriers for them, and that is my role. So I will not be successful without my team being successful.
I love that. How would I answer that? All right, I'll do it in a work context. I define success that on Sunday night, I'm vibrating because I'm so excited to go and work with my team and solve problems and take on big challenges. It doesn't mean everything's easy. In fact, it definitely means everything is not easy. But I'm excited to get to work. I'm excited to put in the time. I'm thinking about it at night. Maybe I can't sleep that well because I got it on my mind. That means that I feel purpose. That means that I feel drawn. That means that I'm going to, on a long enough timeline, I'm going to solve these problems in an issue. And I love the people I work with, and that I'm doing something bigger than myself. And then conversely, I love to go home. I got a great home life. I got 4 kids. I got a wife, and I feel good about that. And so if I feel equally amazing to get to work and to put in time, but also I'm like, all right, I'm ready to get home and be with my family and have a family dinner, and both of those feel that way, wow, then I'm really doing it.
That's a great answer.
Thanks. You'd hire me?
Depends on the role.
Okay. If I ask you about creating a realistic job preview of what it's like to work with you or to work at your company, what are the things you might be saying? How do you do that in an interview?
Wow. For an external hire person, right? I think number one, we have to talk about our team and team culture and what that's like to work for our actual company, because I think that's super important. So I like to tell and talk a lot about how we are as a team and what that would look like for the folks that they would be working with on a daily basis. Ultimately, obviously, you can get specific in the actual role itself, right? You can read the job description, and a lot of those things are very technical and what you may already know based on your knowledge and skill set. And to me, knowledge and skill set can be learned. You can take more courses. You can learn a lot of these things, especially in our industry in healthcare. That's something that anybody can do, right? And so I like to talk more about how would you fit in this company, and what are the things that I'm proud of to say that why I've been with this company for a very long time. Those are the things I focus on in sharing with somebody.
Love that. All right. I'm going to ask you to open up and be a little vulnerable here.
Okay.
When you miss, because we all miss from time to time, right? When it comes to hiring. Is there a theme there? Is there a thread there? Is it something you had to learn over time? When you've missed, why have you typically missed?
I would say the most basic answer, I guess you could say, because this probably happens most of the time, is the person that you're interviewing is all talk. They talk the talk, but they don't walk it. And that is so hard. Again, it's so hard to really gauge that in an hour and a half long, 2 hours. You can even do 5 rounds of interviews with somebody, right? That is the one thing that is a downside of how well can you get to know somebody if they're an external hire. If they're internal, I feel like that's a little bit easier to gauge what's their history and what has been their success or what they've been able to actually accomplish in their role. You can call somebody and say, what's been your experience with this person, et cetera. But when you're hiring from external, that is the one piece that is so hard to gauge, that I feel like the better questions that you ask them to see if they are the person that they say that they are. That's to me the biggest miss.
Great advice. All right, last hiring question. If I ask you to think back to your best hire, does somebody come to mind?
Ooh.
You don't got to name names. We want everybody to think it's them. But I would ask if somebody comes to mind, and then if you knew it in the interview process, or how soon did you know it?
Probably 3 months in. I usually know 3 months in typically is when I know when I've got a great hire.
Okay.
Because the first few months, they're still trying to absorb, right? They're trying to figure out from your left to the right how to function and how to navigate this new team that they're trying to manage. And usually by the 3rd month, I typically can tell. And a lot of it, I'll say, is the soft skills that they have. Because to me, in a leadership role, again, you can learn and be the most technical person in any role that you're in. The soft skills for me are the most valuable one. And if you can really fine tune to see what are those soft skills, both from a positive and a negative, maybe not even negative, but an opportunity for a person to learn and grow more. If you can spot those really quickly based on how a person responds and reacts to you, that's when you know you've got somebody that's very bold.
Great stuff. Okay. A little bit of a different direction. Everybody's favorite 2 letters, AI. How are you using it at work or at home? Any products, tips? Like, how's AI impacted your life?
Oh, we've already started using, or at least within our own approved company where we can use an AI. That's going to change very soon. Everybody is using AI in some sort of capacity. I do think, I'll be honest, I'm not very well versed in that technical space, and so my goal this year was I need to, whether I like to or I want to or not, I need to be more well versed in there. So I'm taking a course that just talks a little bit more about what are the different types of AI and machine learning capabilities out there.
I was going to recommend a book. I always do this. My good friend Sol Rashidi, not related to me, great AI thought leader, the first chief AI officer, she wrote a book called Your AI Survival Guide. And I'm telling you this because I read a ton. It's the most practical book on how you implement AI at your company. So highly
Love that.
recommend. You're not the first person I recommended to, but I just
Yeah.
think a lot of leaders right now are trying to get their heads around it. And to me, that was a really good read for that.
Step one, right, is just learning about it.
Step one is learning, right? You got to take it all in, and then sooner or later you'll be an expert. What about books you've read? Can you recommend a book for me? Anything you'd recommend for our listeners?
I love Grit. You mentioned Grit earlier. Grit by Angela Duckworth.
Angela Duckworth, great book.
One of my favorite books I've read in the last few years. And I'll share, actually, it's on my desk right now. I just started reading this. And funny enough, talking about women in the workplace and young professionals, it's called Career Forward.
Who's that by?
Strategies from Women Who've Made It by Grace Puma and Christiana Smith Shee. Saw this on another podcast I was listening to, and I've really much enjoyed this. It's basically more so just advice from women who've been in Fortune 500 companies and multiple senior leadership roles and how they've navigated their career. I think we talk a lot about the other challenging piece about women in the workplace too, is that's also changed and in the last 20 to 30 years, maybe. And so women now are getting married later. They're having kids later. They're pursuing their careers now more so than prior generations before. And I think that speaks volumes to how much we have progressed. But also at the same time, it's been challenging to balance out what, your when you feel like your purpose is also to have a family, and when do you do that? And how do you navigate those conversations and your career path and find the right balance of being able to accomplish both? So I'm very passionate about that too, but one of the great book I'm reading so far.
Sounds like an amazing book. I'm still getting over the fact that you listen to other podcasts. I thought we were your favorite normal podcast, but I guess it's okay. All right, last one, and then we got our lightning round. I want to know some advice that you'd give 20-year-old Camille that you didn't know then, but that you know now.
Gosh, if I could give my advice, don't be afraid to fail. I think we put so much pressure on ourselves, and we want this fairy tale ending of how your career is supposed to look. And I think I've learned the most from the moments that I've actually failed. If you're not learning, you're not growing, is what I say.
Love that. Really good advice. Okay. We're going to jump into our lightning round. It's sponsored by coffee because it gives me the energy to run the lightning round the way I need to. We're going to have 2 topics, University of Florida and Nashville. Are you ready? Here we go.
Okay.
Favorite class you took at UF?
It was actually a leadership class in my senior year.
Leadership class? Okay.
I
Any
can't
professor
remember
you
the
want to
name
shout
of
out?
it.
Do you remember or no?
Oh my gosh, it's been so long since I remember. I remember very vividly that I was like, I can't believe I took this on my last semester of college and I didn't take it sooner.
I'm sorry for asking you. Zero chance I remember any of my professors' names, so you're totally okay. Leadership class at UF. Favorite Gator alum?
Oh my gosh, I am so horrible at this. I'll say this because I went there my freshman year, but Tim Tebow played and we won the championship back to back, 2007, 2008. So
I don't think you're allowed to give an answer outside of Tim Tebow. Okay, that was
I
an
know.
amazing run, and he was everything you wanted in a college player and a quarterback.
One day we'll get back to this.
One day,
really
it's not
big
today.
first.
I'm sorry to tell you, but one day. Favorite late night haunt?
In Nashville.
No,
Okay.
in UF. We're moving to Nashville right
Oh.
after. Believe me, that'll be a question.
Oh,
there,
okay.
too.
Oh, late night. Oh, they've changed so much in that campus, but they had this Oh gosh, I forgot the name, but it was in a tree house right across the university, and they've changed that now. But they had a whole strip of these bars. We used to go. If they still have this, I'll be very shocked. But they used to have one of the bars called Thirsty Thursday. Because you get dollar pitcher beers, and so that was my favorite late night
There.
adventure
Hold on, I'm writing this
at
down.
US.
Dollar pitcher beer. How far is Gainesville from me? Gainesville is about 200 miles. All right. We're-
Inflation's probably like $5
yeah, it's probably
now, but
$1.80 now, right? $1.80 pitcher doesn't sound as good. Okay. Nashville, favorite restaurant?
Oh, NoCo.
NoCo.
And it's in East Nashville. Asian inspired my favorite place, hands down.
I'm
Very
gonna check
hard
that
to
out.
get into.
Very hard to get into. Okay. Have you been to 210 Jack?
I have.
Not
I have.
NoCo's better.
1,000%.
Wow.
It is
Have you been to Gruzy and Dar at the Hermitage?
I have.
Love that
Also
restaurant.
very,
Also very good.
very better. I think you should try it, and then you let me know what your rating is.
Okay,
But
wow,
I have
no.
not steered anybody wrong. I can probably tell you the menu of what you should order on their menu. Well, as many times as
I'm gonna take you up on that for sure. Favorite place to grab a drink in Nashville?
Oh, well, when? Okay, I only say this because I'm a huge tequila fan, but Pushing Daisies, Speakeasy under 5th and Broadway.
I've been there.
If you're a tequila and mezcal fan, highly, highly recommend.
I am a fan of both. What is the one thing that surprised you moving to Nashville? Positive or negative?
Whoa. I guess I wasn't for surprisingly that there is any public transportation. Uh, it was kind of odd to me. It's not yet, I'll say that, a walkable city, but it will be very soon, I'm sure, in some pockets. But public transportation to get from, around the city, I'm shocked we haven't figured that out yet.
Especially to like, Nolensville and the suburbs and things like that. That's like a good 30-minute drive, lots of traffic. And that's where Franklin, that's where a lot of people live and they commute into the city.
Yep.
And Broadway is not walkable, it's stumbleable. And I have done that before.
For the few blocks that we have there, yes, I would agree.
Well, I love the live music. I love the tequila mezcal. I love the food. Nashville, one of my favorite cities. Camille Mallari, one of my favorite guests. Thank you so much for coming on. I had a great time.
Thank you for having me. This was very great. Thank you so much.
All right. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.